Right, we had a pretty rare occurrence today on Capitol Hill where two members of the U.S. Supreme Court testified before the U.S. Senate representing the High Court as they're asking Congress for more money to fund security for court members, money that Justice Amy Coney Barrett made very clear is desperately needed. Take a listen as she describes some of the threats that she and her family have faced just in the last few years. Take a look.
There was a time, and it was shortly after the Dobbs leak, when the threats to my life were particularly intense, and my security detail thought it was a good idea for me to have a bulletproof vest. So I took it home from the house, went into my bedroom, threw it down, and turned around, and my 12-year-old son was in the doorway, and he said, "What's that?" And when I took this job, I didn't really anticipate being in the position of having to explain to one of my children what a bulletproof vest was and why his mom had it. I was the victim of a swatting incident at my house. One of our teenage sons walked out the front door, getting ready to head out with friends, and the street was full of county policemen, and then I also had my residential security presence there. They had responded to a false alarm saying that there was gunshots being fired inside my home. Anonymized deliveries, and they often come in the name of the murdered son of one of our district judges. The message that these, pizzas and other things that are sent to us, is fairly clear. They're often sent to members of our immediate and extended families as well. They're meant to intimidate and they're meant to harass.
All right, here's the reaction. Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett is with us. I see a couple of things that I observe here. Is the dehumanizing, often insightful rhetoric that people use. It has a negative impact, especially on people that are not well. Number two, we do not enforce the laws that would prevent people from behaving and doing these things at the homes of justices. That could be fixed easily by enforcing the law.
You're right on both points, Sean. I mean, the rising threats on the lives of justices is truly frightening. Up 25% last year, 38% this year. So we're talking about death threats, package deliveries, letter threats, voice messages, vandalizing their front lawns. I mean, some are alarmingly serious, such as the attempted murder of Brett Kavanaugh. Others are meant to, as the justice said, influence decisions through intimidation and harassment, as we saw in the Dobbs ruling that was leaked. And today, Justice Kagan said that was the moment when the floodgates of threats opened up. And it's clear, as you point out, that many of these threats, 1,000 in the last 5 years, are fueled by the rage rhetoric in Washington, the ugly political rants from politicians like Schumer and Warren on the steps of the Supreme Court, threatening themselves, the justices. That seemed to send a signal that it's open season on the justices, sending a message to radical, violent activists, hey, it's okay to threaten them, even cause them harm. Justice Barrett said the threats are constant, they're unrelenting, their homes under siege, their families and children are scared. And how in the world you try to explain a bulletproof vest to your 12-year-old? That is something, Sean, that should never happen in America. It's disgraceful.
Oh, I mean, I remember, Chuck Schumer on the steps of the Supreme Court. I mean, it was just an outright threat. And he's an elected official. And, we're not even holding him accountable for this. In his speech, it resurfaced over again, that you'll rue the day, and right. It just is unbelievable. All right, moving on. So also tonight, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley did release a bombshell trove of information, revealing that the former special counsel Jack Smith and his team read the text messages of 44 members of Congress as part of their so-called investigation into Donald Trump. But Jack Smith is on camera under oath at a House Judiciary Committee deposition, specifically saying he doesn't remember ever trying to obtain texts of any members of Congress. See if you believe him. Take a look.
Did you seek search warrants for the content of any, of the telephone calls, or the content relies mostly to text messages? Did you seek a search warrant for the content of any text messages from members?
From members? No, I don't recall
Okay,
that.
it was just toll records.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, the GOP senators who had their texts read by Smith, they are furious tonight. Grassley's investigation has revealed that Smith never tried to directly get the texts of members of Congress. He went after the texts of people they were texting. We, of course, did reach out to Smith for comment. We've not heard back. Well, I'll add on a personal note, I got a call from one of the elected officials telling me that my texts were on multiple text chains, Gregg Jarrett. What does that mean for me?
It's actionable by you. It's called deprivation of rights under color of law and conspiracy against your rights. It's both criminal and it's civil. So, as I say, it's actionable by you and others. You know, Jack Smith could himself be facing charges.
Who would it be actionable against?
Against Jack Smith and his team of partisans who are actually reading it and violating your First Amendment rights and other constitutional rights. And, you know, 7 months ago, you played one of the clips, but he was more deliberate when he was under different questioning. He said, no, my legal team never read or accessed text messages from members of Congress. Well, you know, these newly revealed Justice Department documents show that's a lie, that they did. They read the communications of more than 40 members and texts from White House phones. They had a filter team, but that was just for show, Sean, because they covertly bypassed the team and secretly read the text. It was a gross abuse of power that shreds constitutional protections, as I say, like the First Amendment. And Smith and his Confederates targeted the entire Republican apparatus, a total of more than 430 individuals and organizations spying on their communications. The goal was to get Trump by hook or by crook and anybody in his orbit. And that, I suppose, includes Sean Hannity.
You know, I happen to be fortunate that I have a lawyer that was involved successfully in over 20 Supreme Court cases. And if it's actionable, they'll hear from me. Gregg Jarrett, thank you. Up next. All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.